Crypto is full of promises, fast payments, lower fees, borderless banking. But for most people, it's still challenging to actually use. Today on Token for Your Thoughts, we're joined by Anastasija Plotnikova, co-founder and CEO of Fideum, a company building the financial infrastructure to make those promises real. Anastasia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me here, Lindsey. And crypto, even since its very early days, it promised to break down the walls, the borders, will transact internationally between each other with very low fees. And I think only now it's starting to become a reality, because for the longest time, the interfaces of crypto were so unusable for the average users that it was such a niche thing. But I think last few years, and especially even with memes and NFTs, that brought it to the mainstream.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm looking forward to talking with you today, covering everything you're doing at Fideum. But to start, it would be great to hear about your journey, up until the point where we're at today. You have a really interesting background. You've done law, you've worked in regulation. Can you tell us a bit about that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career working in the European Union law enforcement agencies in The Hague in the Netherlands. So one of my very first interactions with digital assets, it was through legal cases against some of the platform operators, because those assets were used for very illicit purposes. But mind you, I was technically still born in Soviet Union. And my parents lost their savings quite a few times in their lifetime with currencies crashing. So the whole promise of crypto and Bitcoin, and when I read the white paper, something just clicked. That because it was experienced that so many Lithuanians, I'm from Lithuania, and like other neighboring countries experienced. So on the social and moral level, crypto became just my passion and the topic of research and interest. But nevertheless, I still proceeded with my legal corporate career. At that
Got it.
moment, at that
Yeah.
moment, I wasn't ready to abandon that in years of studying. But I kept pushing and just expanding my boundaries and just researching. And in late 2016, early 2017, I joined a company that now is known as Aave, the largest decentralized lending protocol. So it showed me the worst of the worst what crypto can do, on the law enforcement side, and also amazing decentralized tools with no middleman that can elevate people and provide them social lift and different types of earnings and savings on the blockchain. But being this, I think, bureaucrat at heart and a lawyer, you can't be ex-lawyer. I realized that in order to bring crypto truly mainstream, first of all, regulations will come, and it was obvious even in 2016 and 17 and 18 and up till now. And that was happening across the globe. And also a lot of users, they didn't really care about the underlying tech, and fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
They care about usability, security, safety. If I forget my password, what will happen? Starting from those simple things. So when we started to build Fideum, we tried to incorporate both as usability for businesses. We service businesses, mainly B2B customers. And so they don't need to think, about the blockchains and seed phrases and how actually payments are being processed. Our job is to simplify it for them because they're so busy building their own businesses.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that background. Gosh, you mentioned that your family lost their savings multiple times. I mean, that must have been so devastating. You've experienced currency crashes. It makes me think of images of Germany when they were experiencing inflation after the First World War, and people would have, wheelbarrows full of money, and it couldn't buy anything, or it could just buy very little. Having gone through something as profound in that, I can imagine that was impactful for you in seeing what crypto can do and problems it can solve. You starting out in law and regulation, I mean, these are industries that they have rules and things are very clear. So you've gone from that very structured, certain environment into crypto, which is just very gray and has not been certain. I mean, what was that like? Was that difficult going from one to the other? How did you approach that?
I think I didn't think about how difficult or easy it would be because it was so interesting.
Okay.
Decentralized lending, meeting people from all over the world, building products that, to be fair, a lot of products that were built, let's say, in this first wave of crypto, to some extent, they were copy-paste of TradFi products just on the blockchain. And still, fair enough, they're amazing and they're very much needed. But then we saw developments of different decentralized exchanges, and they had deeper liquidity. And then, of course, we had few waves of ICO, and a lot of companies emerged actually very strong. And they developed really products that now are being used by hundreds of thousands crypto users. But crypto, it's an interesting beast. On one side, it looks like absolute chaos, but still what we have underlying under all of that is code. And discussions about, is code law? No, code is not a law, and all those kind of things. So the structure as well as responsibility for what are we deploying and how people are using it, that is just such an exciting journey. I don't just sit and think about how difficult it is, but sometimes, with upcoming regulations, with changing regulations in the United States, we couldn't operate for a very long time because of, there was no regulation and we're too small to fight, potential SEC fines and etc. So in that sense, yes, it's very turbulent and chaotic.
Right. Yes. And I always like to ask, you said you've been in corporate world before. What also made you decide to leave that and then embark on your own entrepreneurial journey? Because that is also quite something. I can imagine leaving, the security of having a career to jump and start a business. So what was that like for you? What was that decision-making process, or how did you approach that risk essentially?
It's a good question. I didn't have very long list of pros and cons. I decided I would like to try it because I can always go back to corporate. And I just dived straight in. You
All
know,
right.
no regrets, no self-doubting. You have to do it. You have to be full in, because then in the end of the day, you're responsible for your clients, for your colleagues, for your employees, for their salaries and company needs and fundraisers and operational expenses and all of that. So I didn't have any time to doubt, how I will do. So, and this is what I suggest to do to everyone else. Just try it. We can always go back to corporate. Plus, crypto pays. And perhaps you notice it as well. People that enjoy this crazy 24/7, it's very hard to adapt to, let's say, more normal worlds and more normal pace of either TradFi or legal, because this is very addicting.
Yes. Yeah, like you said, it is very exciting. We're creating a whole new industry from scratch. So being a part of that, seeing it evolve in real time, it can definitely be a roller coaster, but it can be a fun ride. And I guess that's not for everyone, but if you like that, then it's definitely an exciting place to be with lots of promise and benefits. Something that I read when I was doing research for this interview was that in the early days when you were starting Fideum, you struggled to get a bank account, or you couldn't get one, or you felt like you weren't welcome. How did you deal with that? Because I'm sure it's something you had probably never experienced before. Did you feel deterred by it? Was there a moment when you were like, gosh, might this not work with this reception or this environment? Can you talk us through that?
This, I think, will bring slight PTSD in so many crypto founders. Because being unbanked as a crypto company, even a crypto individual, I think now only very recently the whole situation is becoming better. For the longest time, and mind you, we're a licensed business. We're fully doxed. We have our perfect accounting and audits in order. Banks and some other payment institutions, they would be directly saying, no. They would open an account and just say, you're not a desirable type of client, and essentially just
Gosh.
shut the door.
Wow.
And since we never experienced that before, that was very bizarre feeling, thinking, oh, maybe we didn't fill out some forms right. Let's schedule a meeting with our account manager. And then, I think it was like maybe first half a year of operations, we realized, no, we're considered high risk industry on par with guns, and gambling and adults and entertainment and so on. And it took us so long, first of all, to create the relationships and nurture relationships with our banking partners, so then we can also in turn service our clients with the same thing. So luckily, and this is when we really needed regulation and regulatory clarity, because if our industry has very clear list of yays and nays, who we are, what are those tokens, is what company does actually permitted and not just in the gray area, it makes larger banks and larger financial institutions more comfortable to work with us. So, and for that, we did so much grassroots works through different associations, working with other crypto companies, going to banks together, organizing seminars, educating even local law enforcement officers on how to evaluate or how to even investigate crypto crime, how to do audits, how we should do accounting, et cetera, et cetera. And I think our industry did a very good job across both sides of the pond on doing that and essentially providing those educational resources to the public institutions, also private institutions, because until very recently, crypto was just, it's used by criminals.
Right. Gosh, that must have been quite the journey for me, from being part of the regulation side, enforcing the laws, and then to on the flip side being categorized with the high risk, or you said guns, or being made to feel like there was something unsavory. That must have been quite an interesting flip for you, right?
Feeling, because a lot of our team members, they came either from TradFi or other startup ecosystem. So for them to hear, and from compliance, and they worked at the large Nordic banks, and getting rejected was such a new feeling.
I bet, because yeah, you can imagine you're very respectable. It's like, what? Why am we being shut out like this? So, gosh, yeah, it must have been very interesting. But good on you for just powering through and looking at it as, okay, we need to educate, we need to build relationships, and seeing that there was a path forward, and carrying on. So let's talk about Fideum then. Can you talk us through the genesis of where the idea came from and why you started it and the problems that you're aiming to solve?
Absolutely. So very initial idea came as we needed a better way to transact with crypto assets and fiat assets in one app. And very initial iteration of Fideum was actually retail user facing application. And that application did fairly well, but it was very hard to scale it in the bear market, especially after Celsius and Luna and FTX within that scope. We needed a lot of VC funding in order to make a consumer app very, very popular. And VC money were not in crypto at that time after those scandals.
Right.
At
Yes.
that moment, we already had multiple licenses, and we had all the tech that we built all in-house. So we decided to service businesses that are just like Fideum. The bank accounts were closed. They didn't know how to collect the stacks of documents for compliance to open bank accounts. They needed to pay their employees, etc., etc. Very normal crypto banking payments. So it's a newer category because, as you know very well, you need to pay contracts in stablecoins. This contractor would like to be paid in ETH, and this one would like Euro or maybe USD. So we provided that. And then when regulations started it was becoming obvious that at least European regulation will come into force. Parliament voted, we really looked into what would that entail. And on one side, it's additional burden for all crypto firms. It's a very heavy licensing process, very similar to a large brokerage licensing process. So it's a lot of work. But then it means that crypto will become much more accessible, essentially to 300 million eligible Europeans that now would be able to buy it through their brokerages. But there are only a few companies that would build that tech themselves, because until very recently they hated crypto. And now, according to new legislation, they can provide those services, and they want it because they don't want to lose their clients to Coinbases and Krakens and Robinhoods and Binances. So we looked into what that legislation is, and we built a crypto SaaS for those firms, so they can plug it in and start servicing their clients with crypto services. So this part of the business is B2B2C.
Okay. Got it. Nice. Yeah, that makes total sense. There's a huge market there, a huge opportunity, but just barriers in terms of, how to access those consumers. So can you give us some examples of the businesses that you're working with and what you're doing for them?
Absolutely. So one of the most obvious, and really it's right now category leader, are mid-sized brokerages. So they have their fantastic user bases. Usually they're fairly localized. So let's say it would be Lithuanian brokerage that has very good number of Lithuanian clients. And those clients, they would like to work only with Lithuanian brokerage for whatever reason. They're very patriotic, let's say.
Love
And,
it.
and right now they're using one of large brokers' APIs to service that, because their unique selling point is white glove service to their customers. This is why those customers stay with them. So we're becoming their crypto API, and they can
Right.
nurture those relationships with their clients. And we're providing that just technical infrastructure so they can continue building the business, and we just enable them to do so.
Okay, awesome. And are you primarily working with people in Europe or is it global?
So on the SaaS level, it's primarily Europe and Turkey, another fantastic market. Also because their regulation is almost copy-paste in a good way from the European one. So this is for SaaS. For payments, we'll have clients in Canada, in Australia, in Latin America as well. And I'm keeping everything what I can crossed for US to pass very clear legislation.
Yes, fingers crossed. It's definitely looking more hopeful now. So you mentioned that Fideum started as a retail product and then you moved to working with businesses. You still have a retail offering, right? So can you talk us through that?
So retail offering allowed us to learn so many very important lessons on what actually those users want. Because so when we're deploying those solutions to our B2B clients, we can actually advise them on what marketing campaigns will work, what in-platform incentives are the best for their use case, etc. We did sell our retail user base to another firm because we thought they would service them better, but we keep supporting them with some of the IP solutions that we have as well as infrastructure. But the key is that we understand the pain points of businesses that service retail users, because in the end, everything what we do, it doesn't matter if it's payments or B2B, there is that individual user at the end of that. So we need to make sure that they are happy, satisfied, and the fees are reasonable for them as well.
Okay. And what are some of the major pain points that they experience that you solve?
Interestingly enough, there are a couple of pain points. Some pain points we can solve, such as speed, liquidity, meaning they can trade or receive more exotic assets, if they wish so, as well as convenience. But on the other side, we have, at least here on the European Union side, very interesting situation / almost problem when it comes to compliance. All the mandatory compliance is becoming so burdensome that some of the users actually decide just to go completely on the DeFi. But there is no KYC, there is no AML, because European AML has no mercy, unfortunately. We have our AML fifth directive that is very, very extensive. And in this sense, US and Canadian banking is much more friendly. It's friendlier for businesses and individual users. So currently we're working also with some other crypto firms on how to optimize those processes, because as a user, it might be so annoying to provide your full source of funds and wealths going years back just to withdraw, the travel rule and et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to make those aspects for the end user as painless as possible. But for our B2B clients, we provide them simplicity. Just plug in and there you go.
Right, amazing. And can you share a story from whether it's a partner or a business that you work with, or perhaps one of their end users where you've thought, yes, this is why we're doing it. This is a great story of an example of, a problem that you're solving or why you have the services that you do.
So when end of 2023, we won the MasterCard Lighthouse Award for Baltics and Nordics. And
Amazing.
actually first ever crypto company in the region, at least for Europe, for MasterCard to win that. And when we enrolled, we did not believe that first of all we'll get in because crypto and MasterCard. But we went through quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, and there was such an amazing interactions with MasterCard itself and also with banking partners that in the end were our judges because it was
Oh,
partnership collaboration program. And when we had, I won't be naming names of those banks, but when we had those discussions, very often they would start with banking partners sitting like that. So they
yeah.
would, and we have to pitch out. The whole purpose of the program is to find product fit between us, like upcoming startups, fintechs, cryptechs, and banking partners who are our target audience. So they would start with that, saying,
Oh, that's so funny.
I see. And
Anastasia has her arms crossed and looking a bit unimpressed for those who aren't watching the video right now.
then they would slowly warm up when we would emphasize licensing, compliance. We're just like you. We
Right. You're speaking their language.
Exactly. And when we had some discussions, almost on the decision-making level, we would have 3 executives, and 2 of them are pro crypto, and 1 still thinks that crypto is a scam.
Right. Okay. Total mixed bag.
Exactly. Well, that was almost a year and a half ago. The situation is changing, and when we went, for instance, and participated in some discussions with Mastercard Turkey, how pro crypto and pro innovation that region is, Europe just eats the dust. I'm very European. I wish our continent all the success, but amount of payments and how quick and agile they are in implementing different payment solutions, either it's a QR codes by SMS or block stablecoins, is truly unbelievable. So I think it's and when we met as a team with some of their team members, the first thing they said, crypto, we love it. So, and that
Oh,
was
wow. Amazing. Yeah, it's definitely been something to, if you've been in this space for a while, to see how reactions change based on what's happening with the market or what's in the news. But my experience has been like that too. People are either curious or they ask questions or they're just flat out like, oh, crypto, we're staying away from that. We're avoiding that. That's just like total, like, no, just closed doors. Like, okay, all right. And yeah, like you said, it's really cool to see how it shifts depending on what's happening. It has been changing, which has been really cool. On the topic of regulation, you've been in the space for a while. You have a background in this. What is your take on how things have progressed? It would be my assumption that regulation is probably something that is naturally can be quite slow. Do you think it has moved at a normal pace for the space, or has it been fast or slow? And what do you think it says about things moving forward?
I think if we look at the whole industry holistically and globally, we always had some jurisdictions that were very forward thinking. Perhaps it wasn't the most comprehensive regulation, all things crypto in one package, but we early days Singapore. Even Lithuania, we had rules on how to pay tax in crypto in 2015, because historically we had a lot of crypto mining here. Then we had initial licensing / authorization processes and regimes for crypto firms. Then UK had their own first. Then we had, of course, Middle East that came up with fairly comprehensive crypto regimes. So we saw those little sparks of crypto regulation, and then finally European Union came in with markets and crypto assets regulation that became mandatory for all 27 member states, or 28. After UK left, I'm always confused.
Yeah.
I saw there.
Yeah, where are we at again?
Yeah. So now it means that we have a general market of 700 million people. On the positive side, Turkish regulation is fairly similar to European, meaning these 2 massive economic blocks can transact between each other fairly easily. But then we have whole Middle East that have their own very different regime. I have a suspicion that UK, at least it indicates so far, that they will take their own quite unique path. And then we have US. the largest, the wealthiest market that everyone wants to enter. And until recently, well, as well as everyone else, it was legislation by enforcement, which was, of course, no predictability, no clarity for firms. So now in the US, we have Genius and Stable Acts. Interestingly enough, both European and American regime do not allow any yield bearing on stablecoins. So
Oh,
it's
right. Yeah.
something that across the pond regulators, and perhaps it has something to do with banking industry and the lobbying, but maybe
Right.
we'll discuss it.
Yes.
Maybe we need to ask some bankers what they think about that. So
Mm-hmm.
stablecoins right now is becoming a very hot topic overall because 99% of the market is US-based stablecoins. So of course, our European Central Bank is not happy, to put it mildly. But what we see on the ground amongst many, mid-sized and larger firms, US is becoming the jurisdiction where everyone at least is considering, shall we investigate? The taxes are lower, the talent pool is just larger, and it was so closed for us for so long as crypto industry. There is so much interest in exploring what is happening there actually.
Yes, definitely. It's definitely good to see that there's been progress and it's looking hopeful. So it will be interesting to see what happens. What would you say has been the most meaningful sign of progress on the regulation front?
Oh, this is a tricky one. Meaningful also, it can be so many things.
Hmm.
I think,
Perhaps to you, because yeah, I guess it depends on who you are as well, but from your perspective.
oh, this is a good one. Remember when a few years ago in US we had I think there was a Janet Yellen meeting and the guy had buy Bitcoin sign.
Yeah.
That wasn't the most meaningful one. We had something similar happening, on our European Union side. And just in the beginning of this year, we had so much negativity from our European Union regulators on, even though they are the ones that passed this crypto bills, the crypto is bad, stable coins are bad, and yet we need to do something urgently because US based stable coins are changing everything.
Hmm.
It feels like they saw us in the beginning as some kind of nuisance. Then it was ICO scams, we need to protect the market. And now we became an industry that needs to be reckoned with. And yet we're so different from them in a sense. We're following the rules, but ethos and the speed on how we deliver things is so different. I think just in this overall, the approach, how they see us, it changed so rapidly, essentially in the just few years from crypto to, okay, crypto, risky, but there is a licenses, there is a
Hmm.
regulation. So I think this transition that now we stopped being personas non grata. It's
Yes.
much nicer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because a lot of this depends on it's ultimately people that sit on these regulatory bodies that are making the laws. And if they have that perception still of, oh, this is shady or it's a scam, things are going to take longer or it's not going to be as desirable. So it's huge seeing that shift in perception, because when more people are educated and really understand what's going on, that's when progress can happen quicker and there can be more productive conversations to create rules that will benefit people in the space, users, etc. So we've touched upon MiCA. It's really reshaping the regulatory map. You said it benefits traditional banks, but it could squeeze out smaller players. What's something you wish more founders understood what's happening here?
So since now we have a very clear regulatory regime. On one hand, it is truly amazing. We clearly know what is allowed, what is not allowed. We as an industry were asking for it for, well, almost a decade. And now we have it. And now when we have it, we're not completely happy with what we have.
Right.
So
Yeah.
on one side, there are many services that we're allowed to provide, of course, with licensing. But it seems and it shapes to be that simple cost of compliance, let's say for average firm, is between 1 and 2 million euros, which is between 1.3, 2.3 out of the bat.
Wow.
fully compliant. So now when founders are thinking, shall they go with pure DeFi options or where should we set up a firm?
Hmm.
It's going to be very interesting because now we're in Europe, we're applying, we're complying. We see a lot of also mergers and acquisitions happening simply because of the cost a bit prohibitive, especially
Yeah.
when you just raise, you want to go and build. You don't want your first hire to be compliance officer, even though compliance officers are critically important for any business. So we see some companies are leaving for Middle East, United Arab Emirates. They have very favorable tax regimes. Some companies are moving or considering to moving to United States as well. So we see that on one side we will have a smaller number of crypto firms, and those firms will be very well regulated and supervised, which is an
Hmm.
benefit for consumer. But I'm afraid we might either lose some talent to CeFi, to complete CeFi, or they will decide to relocate, or maybe they'll just innovate in DeFi. So there is a little bit of uncertainty with them founders that are just about to raise, or they're in the midst of raise, or they just raised, but perhaps not enough in order to really scale with this regulation.
Yeah, that's a huge cost to embark on. Definitely would be interesting to see what happens there. And you've worked across several jurisdictions. You were working for a company in Canada, right? You're from Lithuania. What is a common mistake that founders tend to make when scaling regulated products globally?
It will always take longer and be more expensive than you predicted and estimated. It's there is always something that wasn't either factored in or given regulators or products, they will have more questions. And again, fair enough, the crypto is still a new thing, but it's
Hmm.
not it's better to launch quicker than plan for your grand deployment of all services at once because the markets are moving also so rapidly that you have to deploy, test if customers like it. If not, you quickly redo it and don't spend too much time building the whole complete solution and then releasing it to the market.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense and is really good advice. So you're sitting at the crossroads of crypto, compliance, emerging tech. Is there a trend, do you think, that's particularly underrated right now?
In tech or in general?
I guess just across all of those, industries.
I'm afraid I'm living in such a regulatory bubble that
Yeah. Hmm.
there are a lot of trends, again, when it comes to stable coins. And I know we're
Hmm.
circling back to that, but stable coins, they're so essential. It's a lifeblood of crypto, essentially. It's the liquidity that goes in and out, and it's stable and it's pegged. We see, at least, within our firm, that even though on the face of it, crypto market is hurting, with today on April 23rd, the markets recovered that the price action is not what people would want.
Hmm.
Five volumes in payments and crypto, they are still only going up and increasing. So
Hmm.
even though retail got wrecked due to the meme coin horrible value extraction from that user base,
Hmm.
it won't stop TradFi with tokenizing different assets and doing payments and growing and acquiring. So it looks like there are two crypto markets. One is memes, NFTs, payments, a lot of fun on crypto Twitter or crypto.
Hmm.
And the second is TradFi is finally in and they are actively working with crypto and it's not as shiny as other things that we see online. So there are two
Hmm.
crypto realities, I would say.
Yes, definitely. It's interesting to see. Obviously, those things they're fun to talk about, and there are cute pictures, whether it's of a dog or or
Yeah.
linked to some popular cultural thing that people care about, and there can be a lot of noise around that. But like you say, there is a lot happening and going on that is really building the infrastructure and moving the space forward that perhaps you don't always hear so much about or doesn't get so much attention. Looking back, we've talked about the early days of starting up and some of the challenges that you faced. What's something that you know now that you wish you had known just starting out, or that you would share with other founders starting out? You shared some really great insights on what it takes to be compliant and what to expect from that. Is there anything in particular, like a learning that you'd like to share?
100%. Product market fit, it seems so obvious, but even internally in the earlier days, we would develop something and would do our, fairly small beta testing and would think, this is amazing. How could you not like it?
Of course.
And then you go, because you pour your heart and soul and coding hours and, drawings on the whiteboards. And then you go to clients and they're like, oh, we don't need it. It's not a problem. So
Yeah.
it's better to go and just speak to clients, get them on Zoom calls or whatever, or in person, and ask for their pain points and then solve for that. You'll save money and time, and clients will be actually more eager to engage with you because you ask for their opinion instead of just coming with your suggestions and ideas. But yeah, we had some of those when we thought it was such a great, feature product, but no, it wasn't.
Gosh, yeah, I can only imagine just coming to that realization that everything you poured your heart and soul into, and someone to say, oh, actually, no, this is, yeah, we don't need that. Or it's a bit of a different reality to what you thought. And you've shared about how you started out with a retail product and then you pivoted to working with businesses. Is there anything else that you would like to share about Fideum and what you're doing, whether it's a particular feature that you like or something that you've seen traction with lately?
So I think year 2025 is such a turbulent,
Hmm.
to tariffs and general economic uncertainty year, but so far it shapes to be a really good year. The customer inquiry is growing. Crypto volume transactions are only growing across all sectors, not only ours. We see large entities investing in other crypto companies or in us or investing in sector in general. And we see a very interesting trend when previously a lot of companies wanted to be fintechs in order to retain their customer base. Now a lot of companies want to become cryptechs because they already have a fintech aspect, but in order to really provide and capture those clients and give them full suite of services, they need that crypto aspect. Either it's a crypto payments, crypto payout, crypto cards, or just accepting crypto in general. So this is becoming very interesting interconnecting system between fintech, crypto, as well as even social media aspects. Even if you look at Telegram, for instance, they have their own network, their own payments and apps and mobile games, etc.
Well, that's really great to hear that despite all the turbulence and drama happening around the turbulence of tariffs, etc., that you're having a really good start to the year and you're seeing a lot of positive steps being taken, in the market and in the industry. What are you guys, working towards this year? Like what is success going to look like for you guys in 2025?
We would really like to process more than 1 billion payments in volume, just in general for our clients. And this is one of our goals, as well as we would like to onboard another 50 brokerages.
Right. Amazing.
Board them, and then we're going to make our products even better because we hear so much feedback from these very TradFi clients on what they want. And it's either compliance or simple downloadable reports that they require for their back office. So we're learning together with them on what they require. And this is really exciting because we're never bored.
Yeah, I bet, right? Well, it sounds like you are really helping to bridge that gap between institutions and crypto and really helping them access the huge market of people that want to access crypto, but just don't know how. You're making it accessible and enabling institutions to tap into this space, which I'm sure for a lot of them, like you said, the perception is either not so positive or they don't know how to access it in a compliant or easy way. So it sounds like a fantastic service you're offering. Is there anything else that we missed or that you would like to cover before we wrap up?
I think we covered everything. We covered almost all continents. We covered our products, and this year is a good year for crypto. We have global regulations in almost all key markets. And now it's time for crypto industry to grow, work together, work with regulators, and just service millions of users. This should be our mission.
Definitely, it's definitely an exciting time, and it will be interesting to see what happens. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been such a great chat, and I really appreciate you sharing more behind the scenes details of what it's been like to enter the space and to build in the space and to work through all the challenges that a lot of founders experience and how you dealt with that. I'm sure a lot of listeners will find that really helpful and useful. And of course, it's been great to hear everything you're building at Fideum. All the best with your goals this year. Those are big, exciting goals.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so that's it for today's episode of Token for Your Thoughts. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to follow the podcast and stay tuned for more interviews with people building the future of crypto and Web3. We'll see you on the next episode.